In this video, I want to share with you what I do personally. And to be honest, I was hesitant about making this video because I believe that everything we've talked about up until now is a complete system that you can use and make it your own. Take it and use it how it works best for you, depending on what types of books you want to read, what your learning style is, and all those things. So this is how I've taken that information personally and applied it to my reading. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way for you, but it's just one option. It's how I do it. But what I really want you to do is take the information and incorporate it into your life. So with that said, here's what I do. Remember, we talked about previewing every book. So what I do is I'll preview the book as soon as I get it in the mail. For me, it's kind of like Christmas, right? I'll get the package and I'll open it immediately and I'll start flipping through it. I'll go through the table of contents and then I'll just start flipping through it and then just start reading random parts of it. And this does two things. First of all, it gives me a basic idea of what the book is like, but more importantly, it helps me plan for how I want to read the book whenever it's time to read. So it gives me a good sense if I want to skim the book just by dipping this into the sections that interest me, and I'll be able to identify those sections when I'm previewing. Or maybe I'll be like, wow, this book is really good. It has a lot to offer me. I'm going to go, quote unquote, from cover to cover. So remember, we talked about there are three ways to read. The first is previewing. The second is skimming. The third is reading, quote unquote, from cover to cover. Well, I always preview, and I do it as soon as it comes in the mail. And then based on my preview, I'll decide if I want to, quote unquote, skim the book by dipping into the sections that are delivering a lot of value, or if I want to go from cover to cover. And if I do want to go from cover to cover, this is how I do it. First of all, I'll be sitting at a desk and I'll have my pen in hand ready to use it to guide my reading. And every time I'll finish a line, I'll immediately move the pen to the beginning of the next line so I can just keep it going in a continuous motion. But now let me give you an example of how I do it. You see, because even when I read cover to cover, it's kind of a hybrid between the second and third way of reading. So let me show you an example here of exactly what I do, because you see, to me, reading is being able to go through a book and take everything out of it, and even the context of what you're taking, take that in as well, but to not waste time on things that you can never act on, and that really knowing those things can't really help you, because you could be using that time to learn other things that are more valuable. So let me give you an example from a page in Jack Welch's book, Winning. So you see, this is a page in the book where he's talking about having a mission and values. So this is how I'd go through it. Let's say this was the first page of the book. I'll use my pen and I'll just quickly move it across the first line. I'll see, okay, we're talking about mission and values, right? And then I'll see that I'll start reading the first few words, maybe the first line of the next paragraph, and I'll be like, wow, there's nothing really in this. He's just really talking about platitudes or just empty words here. So I'll immediately skip down to the next paragraph. And then it says, too often these exercises end with a set of generic. So again, I immediately know I don't care what's too often. I just don't want to know what is the right thing to do. Again, next paragraph. And then here's something of value. Okay, it says, by contrast, a good mission statement and a good set of values are so real they smack you in the face with their concreteness. So if I have a business and I manage people, that's actually valuable, because most of the time, and in school too, you hear about all these mission statements and values that are just posted up in a wall and aren't very concrete, so they have no impact. So I'm like, maybe I need to make my mission and values more concrete. And then I'll keep reading and I'll have that other takeaway, that values altogether are just behaviors. And that's another big takeaway, because it's different than what most people talk about. You see, most people talk about values and they just post them on a wall and they don't really act on them. But if you think of them as behaviors, that's again a reframe that you can apply. And to me, that reminded me of Bill Walsh's book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, when he talks about standard of performance. So I'll even write next to that quickly, Bill Walsh, standard of performance, so I could tie the two things that I'm reading together. It's always good to tie things that you're reading together so you have you're learning it better. So anyway, and then I'll go to the next sentence. Okay, we're talking about mission. And then the real takeaway to that is essentially a mission statement is how do we intend to do business? And then he starts talking about, I read the first few words, it says, it does not answer. Again, I don't care what it doesn't answer. Skip to the next section. And I'll keep doing that until I get maybe to a section that I'll just read it and I'll have no interest in it. So I'll skip that section altogether. And then maybe I'll get to a chapter about mergers and acquisitions, which is good to know. But again, I don't run a big company big enough where I'm concerned about mergers and acquisitions at this point. So I could remember that, okay, if I ever have that problem or opportunity, I can come back and read it. But for now, I'm going to skip that chapter entirely. So this is what I do to really go through an entire book very quickly. I'll preview it beforehand. And again, you don't have to do this. You can preview it when you start to sit down and then decide. And then what I'll do is most of the time, I'll start at the beginning if, based on what I found on my previewing. But let's say the previewing told me that, there's a lot of value in this book. I really want to take a lot of it in. Then I'll start at the beginning and I'll just go through it like this, reading maybe the first 3 words or reading the headers and determining where I can skip and what I should read and using my pen to guide me along quickly. And even when I want to skip a paragraph, I'll move my pen downward just to keep me on path. And then when I get to a chapter or section that altogether doesn't really apply to me right now, I'll skip that altogether and move on to the next one. Or let's say I'm in the middle of a section that in the middle, I realize, wow, this is just all common knowledge or conventional wisdom or just completely irrelevant. I'm just going to skip directly to the next one for that as well. So I hope this was helpful. Again, this isn't the only way to do this, but it's what I've been personally doing and what's been working for me right now.